Well, hello, hello, hello. Leavers and believers. Welcome back, or welcome to, if it's your first time, to Leaving Hillsong. My name is Tanya, and I am so happy that you have joined us this afternoon. Grace and I have whipped up a storm of conversation. I had last found her on a ferry in Indonesia. She slipped off without giving due notice, thanks very much. And I ended up finding her. And this interview takes place on a beach, so you'll hear a bit of background noise throughout. Very tropical. I hope you enjoy it. You will recall that Grace was very keen to discuss the National Redress Scheme in Australia, which has been a result of the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse that was held nearly 10 years ago. It started, it was an investigation into how various institutions responded and to allegations, to reports, and as a result, a scheme was initiated, and Grace has been involved in that space professionally over the last few months and wanted to report more. So do be aware there's a mention of child abuse coming up later in the show. But first of all, we do have a bit of a chat about Brian Houston, the former Hillsong pastor, senior global one, went to court recently again, and so we have a little chat about that and some other happenings around and things to take a serious turn. So there's something for everyone in this episode that is called The End of an Era, Part 2, with Grace. Grace?
Hey,
Grace? At what point did you say you were going on vacation, Grace?
as of last week.
Ah, I contacted you a couple of days ago. I mean, as you know, and you were about to get on a boat. You were about to get on a ferry in Indonesia. So somewhere between, last week and right now, you've taken off on vacation. But there's no excuse. There's no rest for the Leaving Hillsong crew. So
For the faithful.
I found you. Got to try and keep these listeners happy. How are you? What's it like?
Yeah, it's great. If anyone's been to Indonesia, it's a very interesting country. I mean, it reminds me a lot of India, but India has a way more diverse landscape than Indonesia. Indonesia's pretty tropical on the equator. But I've been meeting a lot of Americans.
Oh, yeah? So it
It's
seems
a bit
like
of
a
a
long
trek
way.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trek for them, but I don't know. There must have been some good deals. And it's an interesting country. I mean, there's a lot of religions here all living in harmony, they say. I was talking to a guy who was driving me, and he said, yeah, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Catholic, but they all actually seem to get along and respect each other very well. Like there's not this kind of argumentative thing going on that we see in the West.
Okay.
I don't know whether maybe there's less diversity here in terms of like different cultures, and maybe because there's more racism in the West. I don't know. It's. I'm curious. There's probably some academic out somewhere who's already started talking about this sort of stuff.
Smaller area, less resources.
Well, I think as well because Indonesian people, like, there's not much cultural diversity. There's just Indonesians and there's different tribes and their communities and islands that separate them, and their cultures are quite diverse. But it makes me really interesting. Like, how did this place not get colonized? Like, I just wonder, like, apparently the Dutch were here
Okay.
and a few other Western nations. But yeah, I don't know. It just really interests me. Maybe they saw there was so much population, people living absolutely everywhere. I don't know. It makes me curious to see what the history is. But look, I haven't gone Googling yet.
Yeah, because it's certainly, there's the great Southlands of colonisation all around us. So the Mormons got to New Zealand. That was interesting. There's a whole lot of Latter-day Saints there.
Didn't that start in America?
Yeah. But they ended up, they got to New Zealand first or something.
Yeah.
I'm really becoming hugely historically inaccurate and probably culturally inaccurate too. So
Yeah.
let's
It's just interesting how different countries have very different experiences of war, of religion, of culture. I definitely recommend it for those sort of, I guess, learnings and experiences to stretch your mind.
Yeah, it's how people live. It's always fascinating.
Going back to talking about Hillsongs around the world too, like, I mean, wasn't there a Hillsong Bali?
I don't know, was there? I mean, it made sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was. But I think it was run by local, like Indonesian people. But I found that really funny. That came later on in the piece, I think.
well, something that has happened in between our little catch-ups here is Brian wants his money back, all right? So he went to court. He got accused of things that, he can't believe it happened to him. He was accused of concealing a serious indictable offence, and he was acquitted in August. And so he ended up in court last week on 7th of December. And turns out he spent a lot of money on his lawyer for his defence, or his lawyers.
Are we talking about Jared Haynes' lawyer as well?
Yeah, the guy that represented and Jared lost. I mean, jail now. Haynes is in jail. But the same lawyer, yeah. I mean, he had assistants and their assistants and all of Rabbit's friends and relations are there. But yeah, I mean, we were trying to calculate just quietly, amongst the what are we in the crowds. But turns out he spent $1 million defending himself against that allegation. It says here, according to news.com.au.
It's $1 million that he has. It's not that he doesn't have it.
Well, I mean, but it was just so unfair. What he's saying is that, it should never have happened. And he wants to get his money back. It was a 15-day defended hearing. Magistrate Gareth Christofi, you might recall him from Trials and Tribulations previously. He was the magistrate that oversaw the case. He noted it was a large amount of money, he said, even when taking into consideration the substantial amount of material and the complexity of the matter. However, Mr. Houston's lawyer, Philip Bolton, who you were referring to there, Grace, before, said the intricacies of the historical allegations laid against his client required a significant assessment and investigation. Every single cent has been time costed. It is accounted for in the bills by time increments. He said, I reject completely the suggestion that appearing for Brian Houston was a straightforward legal matter. None of these people talk straightforward. One of them just hard, like it was hard, not
so
like...
they're arguing that because of legal complexity, he wants money back.
Well,
because he wanted
so high. That's why the bill was so high. So Mr. Bolton argued the prosecution should never have run the case against his client because it had not excluded the possibility Mr. Houston was respecting the victim's wishes by not going to police. He noted this one. You ready? He noted a central witness who had been present at a pivotal meeting between Mr. Houston and his father's victim was not called by the Crown to give evidence. The court was told the man refused to testify. That's good old Nabi Saleh. How do you refuse to testify? How does that work?
Because they're claiming Party A or whatever is claiming that he was there, and then he's saying, "I'm not." He's denying it.
Oh, he just refused. I didn't know you were allowed to just refuse to testify.
Well, did he give a verbal statement?
No. He's the one who turned up to the McDonald's meeting, you see, remember? But
was that in Brian's defense?
I don't know. No, well, hang on. Was not called by the Crown to give evidence, so
maybe they didn't see it. I don't know. That sounds weird.
That makes sense why in the judgment there were some kind of side comments towards Mr. Sardi that could have shed light on this and that. That's interesting. The prosecution.
I don't know. I haven't gone. You've read all the evidence.
Mr. Bolton said the prosecution made a call not to go there and to rely solely on Mr. Sengstock, and that, in my submission, was an unreasonable decision. He slammed the prosecution for being blind to the issues in their case, which never got any better. Your Honour asked the prosecutor on the first day, "Is this a reasonable excuse?" Mr. Bolton said, "It was, and it was proven to be." Yeah, the payments and stuff, and McDonald's meeting, and hang on. So, Crown Prosecutor Kate Dodds rejected the suggestion the prosecution's case was doomed to fail, and maintained Mr. Houston should not be awarded costs. If he was successful, she submitted, his compensation should be calculated according to the Attorney General's rates for legal representation. So they want to give him legal aid rates. Mr. Bolton hotly declared there was not one single person who charged those rates, which he claimed were deliberately calculated to be significantly less than the market rate. Mr. Houston will learn the outcome of his application for costs when Mr. Christofi hands down the decision in March next year. So he wants his court cost paid for. It's all been a terrible miscarriage of justice, it seems. Well, I don't know.
Well, the Supreme Court called it, didn't they? And this was going to be an example case.
Yeah, it was definitely some kind of test case, hey?
So because they've lost, I'm just curious what that means for Australian government or that particular legislation.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll find out. I mean, it was, concealing a serious indictable offence becoming, a much more significant crime. How do you kind of prove that, that was all kind of, the whole
There's
reason.
so much.
Yeah.
There's so much going on for him.
He's
kicked out of his church. He's sold his house. He's obviously in the States. It's just so much going on for him.
But he's still available. We got a link before. He's still available if you want to book him to speak. I don't know on what precisely. It says here, a link here for the allamericans.speakers.com. Brian Houston. Now, so under the categories of Christian speakers, faith and religion. Now, I did try to put in a booking here, and I'm just interested in, say, the cost would be. So I had a look here, the what your talent budget, 5,000 or less, 5 to 10, 10 to 20. Do they know he doesn't get out of his jet for less than $20,000 of speech? It's for the talent.
He's got to think of some sort of income stream.
That's nice. I don't know. You can have him speak at your next business wedding. No, well, that's nice, isn't it? Big wheels keep on turning.
Yeah, meanwhile, Laura and Togs are doing their church.
What do you hear about that?
I don't know, like they're just kicking on as if they've got to move on with their lives, it seems.
Well, church goes on. The show must go on.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Brian's trying to he's scrambling at any sense of justice he can hold on to. But look, the fact of the matter is, he still hasn't owned up to what he's done. I know there's a lot of, I mean, we know it's historically chronic, the amount of abuse cover up, child sexual abuse cover up that's happened across Australia. You know, what he did with his father that day, you know, it's just a symptom of a whole range of other things that have gone on also. Um, we know that systems weren't in place to take care of children, and since like at the time, I mean, if he was a child at the time where we promoted safety, we promoted talking about something that didn't feel right, that wasn't, you know, that felt wrong, that didn't seem trustworthy, that was too secretive. I mean, we were in a world back then where we couldn't talk about those things, but those things they continued. I mean, we come a long way from there. We know the abuse isn't when people start coming out when they're older and telling stories of what's happened. You know, people are starting to believe it. But I think for me, the big thing is when you're a grown adult and you've actually done something that is, whether it's unlawful against God, your wife, the church, all three, like it's really disappointing that people can't own up to the wrong that they've done. And for me, I'm just like, in a court of law, like, you're sworn to tell the truth. We know that truth doesn't always prevail, but you'd think the old man's conscience would be so deeply troubled to not just say, yes, I did it. All he's done is look at what they've done to me, look at what the church has done to me, look what the court has done to me. Like, I don't understand. He's protecting his image more than anything, which I don't know. I would imagine he doesn't give a flip about the Australian economy anymore. He's probably just worried about his reputation in America. But you
Yeah.
know, America doesn't. I mean, they listen to anything they want to hear. I'm not trying to paint everyone with the same brush as well, but there is an audience out there that only wants to hear the good things about Brian and the good things
Well,
about church.
and
And he'll find those people. He will find those people.
there's a lot of hard done by evangelicals post Trump, you know, that think Trump was a superhero and that he was done out of his presidency, all that kind of stuff. They're already, you know, feeling persecuted and wronged. And he's the perfect story of, you know, he was wrong, dragged before the courts, unnecessarily. And I think
Yeah,
there's
but the
huge.
woman, Pullman's Hotel, Hillsong Conference that year.
Well,
You want to go back in the archives and watch that conference and see whether I don't know. You just wish you could be a fly on the wall again and be like, wow, he was actually doing this stuff for the woman. He was drinking heaps. He was taking medicine, like, he was using it in the wrong way, not in the right way. Like, it just, yeah, to me, it's just like, people know, people knew, and they know still now, and they know things that everyone else doesn't know
mm,
about the situation. I mean, the guy was firing other people. I
mm,
just, it's it's unfathomable to me that you can literally look at another person in the eye. You can tell them how they're loved by God. You can give them all this sympathy and empathy. You can say all this rubbish, and then you can turn around, and the next person walks across the road from you, and you walk up to them, and you can fire them and
yeah,
tell them what a horrible human being they were,
yeah.
and they abused the platform. Like, you can, it's just, the extent to which his behavior, his actions, his what he said, and is so in conflict with each other is just, it's unfathomable to me that a human being can do that bad and that good. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
sure what good he did, but I'm saying he can promote such goodness. Well, on surface level, good things. He can talk about,
Well,
can communicate and encourage, and
yeah, all that giving and sacrificing and all that stuff. But I mean, there's no real mark of accountability. There's no one. Well, you just keep going, and there's a new audience every week and new people, and
he's got that many followers. He's got that many followers. Like, everything on his Facebook is like this. I've said it last week. People are like, oh, I just don't like what they did to Brian. I mean, like, what else are they gonna do? And what story are people believing to think that he was so wrong? I don't know. It's getting blurrier as the time goes on. Information fades a bit, or people's
exactly.
memory fade, and then people forget what happened again. Like, so much has happened since then. People's lives have been turned around upside down. It's funny to me, all these people I've been seeing years in church, and I'm like, what now? They've all kind of had to reinvent themselves, and just, what do they actually think and believe now? That's what I want to know. I'm curious to see, have people dealt with their stuff? Are they talking about the things you and I are talking about, Tanya? Like, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? Or are they just kind of repop back over, like, oh, well, I got my Sundays back and kept some of those friends around, the rest are gone, but who cares? Like, I don't know. It just makes me so curious. How can you be so intense, preaching, teaching, discipling people, or whatever you're doing, and then turn around and then you have none of it, and then you just move on with your life?
Well, I mean, is that what's happening? I mean, surely.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, it's evident these people that can't let go, and they're the ones. They're just trying to create they're trying to fill that void with a new church, and that's great. And they want to be plugged in, and they want to do all this stuff, but it's just going into another world of that, probably to less of a scale.
And
I
then
want to know what churches are happening in Sweden, like what Norway, like what are all these churches doing?
Yeah, this is
It'd be
worldwide.
interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know the gravity of what happened with Brian and Carl Lentz and all the scandals during COVID. I'd just be really curious to hear and see if people were listening to the pod and they're from a particular church and want to talk anonymously. It'd be awesome to hear it.
Yeah, I wonder where.
I think
around
people want to know.
Yeah,
I think people want to know what's going on.
There's been huge changes. The Hillsong family churches that have changed and quit, and and then there's people waiting to move and shuffle on into the empty spaces.
Yeah, totally.
Move on up the ladder. Great opportunity for some.
Shall we talk about the Royal Commission?
Yeah, well, I mean, so tell me, like, you were all. I felt terrible.
I knew it, and I guess so the listeners can understand. I've kind of discovered what's happened in terms of a redress. So what I know is around the world there hasn't been many redresses, and essentially that's the government deciding to open up an opportunity for people to apply. I guess it's a very litigious system. People can make an application, which is filling out a form, which is a little complicated and needs some documentation, evidence. Now, the evidence, I say that lightly because it can be your own statement of what happened and the impact it's had on you. But
now, hang on. So back up. Sorry, just to explain to someone who's never heard of any of this before. What are we doing here?
Well, we've had a Royal Commission, 150 cases that have gone up to an independent panel who've gone to a hearing, listen to the evidence of abuse that has occurred in a particular. It could have been a school, a swimming club, a scout, a church, a church group that's very specific. Like they could have had
Mm-hmm.
a membership towards a particular group within a church. Anything that takes care of kids in
So it
any
was
sort of
an,
slight way. It could be a dance school.
yeah, an institution. So it was a Royal Commission into institutional responses to child
Responsibility.
abuse.
Yes. Now, the key part about that is it had to been shown that it was institutional responsibility. Now,
Okay.
what does that mean? Okay, the cases are there. You can Google it. You can read the reports, the summaries, the findings. You can read the transcripts. It's all there. Now, I recommend two people if you're interested in this field or area. Um, you want to understand the sense of justice and how how an Australian system has responded. They used cases that were they could have been well known for any particular reason, like they were a very well known school, a very old school that had been around for a long time, or they looked at the actual what happened. And essentially, what they do is they do a preliminary, I guess, call out. And generally, they spend a week in all the different cities for people to actually go up and start telling their story in a preliminary way. So they just the nature of what happened in a summary, and then what happens is I don't know who, some sort of decision maker panel, whatever, they go off and then they look at and decide which cases are going to be heard to the panel. Now, the institutional responsibility part is really key. We know abuse was rife. It is rife still. It's everywhere. What we're trying to do is promote awareness, get people to talk about it, get people to acknowledge what happened, and also fix their processes. One of the big things was, or in general, is, for an example, someone could have been removed because there was abuse that happened in the home and they were placed in care of someone else, for foster carer. Now, that person, that child, say they're about 10 or 12, they kind of can make a bit of decisions by themselves at that point. And say they went away and say they spent time with their family, non-supervised, and it wasn't institutionally organized. It wasn't got to do with the systems at that time to organize that meetup, that catch up. And then abuse could occur, child sexual abuse could occur in that moment. That's a case where it's great, and it's not sure whether were they was the abuse institutional responsibility or not. And again, it depends on who actually was the perpetrator, what was the context in which the abuse took place. So I only say that as a disclaimer because it doesn't mean all child sexual abuse. It was very specific to institutions only, and an institution didn't need to just be a church or a school. It could have been anything in particular, anywhere, any place where there were children. Like it could have been a mission where Aboriginal people had to live on mission, and that was run by the government in a
Okay.
particular era, and then abuse occurred. Now, also, abuse doesn't have to just occur. Well, someone should have been informed about it, and this is where the big thing
Ah,
happens. So abuse could happen, right? But it's about arguing also about where was that information shared? Did they go to the police? Did they go to their teacher or a leader or a volunteer? Did they tell that person? Now, people can still apply whether or not they reported it to anybody. And the redress scheme is not very interested in so much into whether the police did an investigation or not, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
the
Yeah.
pure fact that so and so abused so and so in a home, and then that child later went and got and told a leader, and that leader reported it, but then the institution did nothing about it. That's a clear
Okay.
redress.
That's what they're
So
looking.
so the other thing though is they kind of gotten a payout already, or any sum of money needs to be declared in just basic terms. Any sum of money needs to be declared. It could have been a thank you, a sorry money, sorry. It could have been sorry money, like, hey, I'm really sorry this happened. I'm just going to give you like $5,000. $4,000, or we're just going to make your fees waived.
Right.
That is included into when the redress application is made. Now, the impact of abuse is also interesting. People can actually put an application in saying what happened. The lawyer can help them draft that application, but they don't need to write a victim impact statement. However, they always strongly encourage, because these independent decision makers, they're panels of people, whether they're ex-cops, ex-social workers, psychs, they're ex-judges as well, these people that work on this redress. And what we've seen is it's quite a really tedious system, and it's also very unclear how people make their decision. But the more a lawyer can help draft with a person an argument for getting whatever they were asking for, the maximum amount of money you can get is $150,000.
Okay.
This is a double-edged sword, though. So you've got on one hand services that are helping people get the applications done, right? So government's paying for these services to exist, like social workers and lawyers and people with, financial counselors as well to help them with the money. People paying for this service. It's obviously only time limited. It's only going to be running for another 3-4 years. Now that's problematic in itself. I think one of the arguments is we need to actually make this unlimited. People should be able to apply for a redress at any point in their life,
Yeah.
because we know with the research too, they're saying it takes about 22 years for someone to talk about the abuse that happened to them as a child.
Okay.
That's a
Yep.
long time. That's a
Yep.
long time, and there's many reasons for that. But
Often.
yes,
Yeah.
yep. What were you gonna say?
Well, yeah, often longer. I mean, that's what I'm wondering. Is this a new thing that's been announced? Why were you so enthusiastic about speaking about it?
Well, it was just very good. No, well, it's good information for people to know that this story, it's part of a bigger story. Do you know what I mean? Like what's
Yeah.
happened to Hillsong and
Yes.
Brian. It's part of a bigger story. We know there's heaps of victims out there. We know there's heaps of people that have experienced institutional abuse. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so, if people don't know, they're not going to reach out for that support. Like you might not you might decide I'm not ready for an application, but I think it's important that people know that this stuff is happening in Australia, that people can apply for redress. It doesn't guarantee they're going to get any money. But like I said, I'm about to say, there's a double-edged sword with it all, right? You got these people who wrap around kind of supporting. It's kind of like a community legal service type framework that are here to help support people. And that's well and good. They'll help put people through the application process. But then there's the thing of, well, is the government trying to save money here? Like, if you think about it, someone like George Pell, or say Frank Houston, I don't know, there could be someone out there other people out there, we know there was other people that were also abused by him. Now, if someone went through civil claim and got civil advice, they could possibly get, if they're, again, depending on the court at the time, who's the judge, the application itself, the hearing, all this sort of stuff that goes on in this process, they could be getting a lot of money, and I stress a lot of money. Okay, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
The redress scheme kind of gives you a maximum of 150,000, and you can also get an apology, institutional apology, written apology. You can also you also have access to financial counselling that's free, and other counselling. So I think that's why I say it's a double-edged sword. It's good for people to know. It's good to build awareness. It's actually helping people get legal advice for what happened, and also people aren't put under this. It's a re-triggering experience, a re-traumatizing experience. However, there are systems out there that'll help people through processes. As ugly as this process is, it's better off people go and get the legal advice that they need, and then they can make a decision on what suits them. But you can only apply for the redress once. You can get as much legal advice as you want, and you can reapply for that legal advice. But at different points you'll have you get different advice, and then you also still need to make a decision. People can't make decisions for you. And the other thing about this whole process is as well is that it highlights the gravity of what's happened for a lot of people, and that also records weren't kept. This is why Ryan's kind of put through the ringer, because whatever he said in the Royal Commission, he was then held accountable to, even
Yeah.
if the story had changed a few times, and then it
Yep.
lands in the Royal Commission, and now it's signed, sealed, delivered. It's in black and white print. What he said, what he did, who he spoke to, all of that's now solidified. He can't
Mm.
really go back on that story. And people's stories are horrendous of what happened to them. That impact that different abuse had on people's childhood, their functioning with relationships. I mean, really, it's sad to say, but I'm not trying to typecast anybody who's gone through anything in their life of this sort of nature. But lots of people took to alcohol. Lots of people came homeless.
Yep.
Lots of people ended up in jail. And and
Yep.
and there's some really, really horrific, end of life circumstances. And then you've got all of life circumstances in general, like people dying around them, people getting a chronic illness, people ended up
Mm.
terminally ill. Like all those things happen to people anyway, right? It breaks my heart hearing some of the stories of people who are survivors that, some of them they've kept this secret like so tightly locked up in Pandora's box.
Mm.
They are on a tightrope that they're going to fall apart if their whole family was to find out. Like, it's devastating. That makes me so sad, because I think it significantly impacted them. Their functioning is really good, but they haven't been able to talk about it, and they haven't gotten a sense of freedom in that. I don't know what the fears are, but I think people feel that maybe will unravel considerably by telling their story. But I would stress to people that it's really, it alleviates a lot of stress, and it helps to feel validated by another person, and
Yeah.
be believed. Really, the bottom line is being believed.
It's
So I
huge.
think, yeah, I think and I think it leads me on to that whole idea of talking about what's happened is so important.
Mm.
I think a lot of people historically, I mean, we look at the way the world or Australia has changed a lot, the way abuse was, the way looking after children, functioned, and processes and legalities, and whether people believed abuse that children would tell them. Abuse wasn't believed.
I mean, even in
It
the
still isn't believed.
last 9, 10 years since the Royal Commission, there's been major social change, I think, in this country and how the
Yeah,
child
major. But
addressed.
the sad part is there's recommendations that don't get followed. Like,
Mm.
people are like, oh yeah, great piece of paper, but it's like, wait a second, why aren't we demonstrating clearly we're what we if we do and we demonstrate what the Royal Commission says as a recommendation for churches or schools or any sort of religious kind of group, if we're not doing that, we're just going to be more liable in the future when current future abuse occurs. And we know that people who abuse children gravitate to jobs and roles and volunteer opportunities.
Just clarify for me, though, Gracie. Tell me, you said the government was going to be saving money, isn't it? I mean, they sign up, it's the institutions that pay.
Good question. They sign up to pay. So there's lots of institutions out there that haven't signed up to this redress scheme. Now this is where it gets really confusing. There's, like, for example, like some Christian mission in WA. Some of these organisations have changed right over time, their governance, who their board is, who they connected to in terms of associations. And some are no longer associated with churches. They've become their own little NGOs. So it's actually quite interesting how some of them haven't signed for redress. So there's a lot of bureaucracy that also is going on with this. So what the government can do is pay on behalf of that institution. Pretty
Okay.
crazy.
I did not realize that. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? I'm pretty
Now,
sure Hillsong is I think everyone that was a part of the Royal Commission, I think it was they had to. I'm pretty sure they can't not be part of redress. if they were in the Royal Commission.
Well, what would be the easiest way for people to find out about it?
They could honestly just Google redress scheme, Royal Commission, institutional child sexual abuse, or they can just put redress in there, Australia, and they'll find.
Okay. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Beautiful.
They can go and Google it. They'll find some information. There's organisations that are out there helping people do the application process. But what I would recommend is people go and get legal advice first. And there's legal advice. There's places where they can get legal advice for free. But that's where I would say they need to go.
Okay.
Yeah. People's lives and what they've gone through and multiple abuse. I mean, like, yeah, the stories are really, they're devastating, but they're anecdotally a very good message for others to learn about. If you are a pastor, if you are a church leader, if you're a teacher, you're a teacher's aide, anyone who's working with children, go look up these cases and look at how professional judgment can be impaired, and think about the boundaries that you set as a professional, whether or not you've had lots of training or not. As an adult, we are working with vulnerable people, and when it's our responsibility to take that upon ourselves to learn and understand how to work and communicate in a professional manner, and also be a whistleblower, picking up on signs that things aren't going quite right for a young person and that might need to talk about it, and also not putting yourself in a dangerous situation yourself, because I think we need to promote safety and promote good boundaries and healthy environments where we're not left alone with kids, and make them up, the secrets business. There's lots of stuff happening in that teaching space, education space in Australia to kind of try and promote healthier ways to talk and create good learning, and I guess any sort of child focused environment, make sure that it's got these safeguarding practices so we can minimize abuse, really. Minimizing the opportunity for someone to abuse a child in secret. But I really promote people getting legal advice. I think knowledge is power, although we can't, some of that money doesn't always feel like it's justice, and it often isn't, but it might help someone along the way to get something that they really want or need. And it can feel, it's quite a complex grieving process going through that stuff, and people not always get what they want as well out of the scheme. But I think for anyone who's been a victim of a crime, I think it's really empowering to even just be able to go through that process and get the help that they need.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying there's a range of services available, and I mean, money doesn't get stolen youth back. But as you were talking about, people have very real results, there's very real impacts of abuse on their lives, and sometimes that can pay some of those expenses.
And also as well, there's a lot of known information by the government and institutions about particular people who were employees or members of their community at a particular time. And I think it's important that people can reach out and get the advice they need confidentially, because they might be in a position where they can actually get some, acknowledgement for that abuse, which is really important to some people.
Yep. I mean, some people, we know that they are merely seeking an apology. Some people want, the material compensation. So it's all very, very different. Do we leave it there?
Yeah.
And thank you very much. Will you have a fantastic holiday for us?
Thank you.
Be safe, would you? Please?
I will. Good to talk again.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Doing. And there you have it. Whatever it is. I hope some of that information was useful. we would very much like to hear from people who've had Hillsong experiences. As Grace said earlier, if you're in a Norwegian, and we know we have a lot of friends there in Norway and in Sweden, and you want to give us some updates on what's happened, please feel free to drop us a line. And if the redress info is of use to you, well, let's report it. You know my hashtag, report, not repent. And if over time you've been thinking that it's, time to tell your story, our listeners like the stories most of all, just the regular everyday person. Of course, if you're a huge celebrity, you can give us a yell. Selena, I'm looking at you. But seriously, if you're feeling a bit more comfortable lately, who knows? Maybe things have changed. Please give us a yell, and we can sit down and record the history. Thank you so much for your time, for your interest, and for your dedication to our little group. You may recall after the judgment I said we had a legal analysis coming. Our Hillsong lawyer Nick had referred me to a criminal law specialist, a learned friend of theirs, and I don't know, I thought I'd missed the email or missed the time, or anyway, it turns out that lawyers are really busy, but he's keen. So we're going to talk this week, and we will bring to you some further analysis and some actual proper pulling apart of what happened and why in the case of the Crown versus Brian Giles Houston. Very much looking forward to that. Should be getting that to you next weekend. So, lots more fun to be had. It's either very cold or very hot where you are, so either way, look after yourself and be kind to yourself. Kind to the people around you. They're probably hot or cold too, Oh, Christmas is coming, Keep leaving Hillsong, and we'll talk soon. Bye.